स्टूडेंट्स बात चल रही है फाइबर ऑप्टिक केबल्स की और हम लोगों ने द थर्ड टाइप ऑफ द गाइडेड मीडिया और हम लोगों ने फाइबर ऑप्टिक केबल की प्रोपगेशन मोड्स की डिस्कशन को स्टार्ट किया था एंड वी स्पोक अबाउट द टू मोड्स मल्टी मोड एंड सिंगल मोड फाइबर्स. स्टूडेंट्स मैंने आपको बताया था, एज यू कैन सी ऑन द स्लाइड, वी हैव गॉट अ मल्टी मोड प्रोपगेशन मोड एंड अ सिंगल मोड प्रोपगेशन एंड वी कॉल each one of these as the type of fibers that use these particular modes. We call them a multi-mode fiber or a single mode fiber. Let's start with a discussion of multi-mode fiber, and we'll talk about step index and gradient index as subtypes of these of this particular type as well. Students, as you can see in the first type, which is a multi-mode step index, the reason we call it a multi-mode and the reason we call it a step index is this. Students, in this particular case, the density throughout the core, it remains constant. What does that mean? So, students, the density from the center of the core to its sides, it is constant. Students, what happens is, if you've got a ray of light which is entering in a straight line, remember what I told you as a property of light. When the ray of light enters or propagates in a medium which has got a uniform density, the ray of light keeps on moving in a straight line. So you get your ray of light which is moving in a straight line. Now, students, there are other rays of lights which are entering this core at an angle. Single density in the core, lesser density at the cladding. The ray of light hits the surface between the core and the cladding, and it is reflected back. And the process goes on. So different pieces of information in the form of different rays of light, they keep on moving in the multi-mode step index fiber like this. Students, in this particular case, the term step index, it's called step index because it refers to the suddenness of the change in density. As soon as the ray of light hits the surface between the core and the cladding, there is a step change. There is a sudden change in the density, and that is why we call it the step index. Students, ये जो suddenness of the change है, that also gives rise to some distortion. So your multi-mode step index fibers are normally lesser expensive than your multi-mode gradient index or your single mode fibers, but they've got some distortion in them. Students, multi-mode gradient index में your density at the center is the highest. So you've got the center, which is the more dense, and then as you move to the outer edges of the core, your density decreases. So your density decreases. So you've got varying levels of density as you move from the center of the core to the surface between the core and the cladding. So your central light ray, it is moving in one single density, uniform density. It will still keep on moving straight, but in this particular case, the angle of reflection changes, and you have got a signal which is still reflected within the core, but the reflection is not that bad. Students, in this case, you see that the variable density it impacts the propagation of light by changing its direction. Now, students, we come to the single mode fiber. Students, single mode uses step index, but in this particular case, you can see that we have got first of all, we have got a highly focused source of light. We have got a highly focused source of light, and this is still using the step index, and it is manufactured with a much smaller diameter than that of multi-mode fiber. Students, core ka diameter compare karen between single mode and multi-mode, and this is a much smaller diameter. And students, because of that, the decrease in this density, it results in a critical angle that is close enough to 90 degree, and so your propagation of the beams, as you can see here, it is almost horizontal. It is almost straight from the source to the receiver. And students, because of that reason, the propagation of the beams is straight, the propagation of these beams are identical, and we have got negligible delays. And as you can see, the signal that's retrieved at the destination in the case of multimode step index is okay. The one in the case of multimode gradient index is comparatively better, but we have got a very close replica of what was sent from the source in the case of single mode fiber.